Welcome to episode 15 of Shaman Talk with Tegan. Today I'm going to talk about reincarnation again. So I made my first video, but I was just sticking to kind of like main concepts of what that means and what that is. And today I'm going to get a little more personal, share some personal stories, share one story of a client who gave me permission to talk about their experience. And yeah, we're going to kind of get into it. So for those of you who might be on the fence about reincarnation or just flat out don't believe, like I always say, I just encourage you to keep an open mind about it and just see where it takes you and on your journey. And maybe this video will help change your mind or maybe not. It's totally fine. Okay, so when I first, I'm going to back up already. So growing up into like my mid-20s, reincarnation, it's not like I didn't believe specifically. It's just not something that I thought about a lot. And when people would talk about their past lives, I kind of be like, oh, weird, interesting. I don't know. Who cares? And then when I started getting into the spiritual side of things, to me, almost immediately, it was like, oh yeah, reincarnation's a legit thing. And like I said, most people have reincarnated multiple times. There's the very few people out there who might be first-time baby souls, but otherwise, you've lived them. It's out there. So, like I said, I'm going to get into some more personal things and see where it takes us. So once I became a believer, I did my I started my shamanic journey. And that really helped me to understand more about past lives, about your own reincarnations, the reason you're here. And even now, though, even though I've done more outside research too, and I now work directly with people sometimes with past lives, sometimes like the more you know, the more questions you have, So again, I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I can speak from, dealing with this stuff directly. So what really launched me from just believing in reincarnation to being like, oh, here are some of my past lives that I have relived in a certain way or a certain point to help me heal. Because that's the point, is if you can not only believe in your past lives, but figure out what they were and what damage was done, if any, then you can heal from it and grow. Because like I've mentioned in other videos, your past lives, whether you believe in them or not, can be negatively affecting you in this lifetime. And we'll get into that a little bit later with my client's story, my most recent client. So what really triggered it for me, and this is one of those things that in the moment I could not see, and I was like, what the hell? But now looking back, I'm like, oh, okay, there's the steps that needed to happen. So kind of a long story short, a friend's dog actually bit me twice in the leg. And this was not a small dog. This was a German Shepherd who is about the same weight as me. But so in that moment, when that happened, it was terrible and scary and lots of blood and whatever. So again, I'm just going to kind of skip over all the details of that, but I eventually physically healed. But this friend knew someone who knew how to do what's called crystal dreaming. So crystal dreaming is the other thing that I've mentioned in some of my videos where I just recently trained to be able to do it. And I hope to offer it soon by the end of summer, maybe as a means of healing with my shamanism. But I have to create a mandala that I don't have all the crystals for yet. But this friend of this friend did a session for me. And what happened in the session is that you basically go into a different state of being, a different mental state, different brainwave state. And the person who's leading you with this session is coming with you on this journey. So when I do my past life stuff for shamanism, it's me doing it all. I talk to your guides, I get the story, I get the healing, and I give it to you basically. With crystal dreaming, it's a little different. You have to go on the journey with this person, and you see things and hear things and understand things that to some people would be very scary. So crystal dreaming is not for the faint of heart, but it's so necessary. But I digress. Back to my story. So what happened is the dog ended up, the reason, because this wasn't usually an aggressive dog, but the dog saw a past life version of myself that was trying to get my attention. So the dog could see into the fourth dimension and see that I was right in front of me. And so that's why it was trying to attack me from a past life, the fourth dimension me. So it wasn't trying to bite me, but it was confused as to why there were two of me or whatever. And, kind of was just trying to attack for me, but ended up getting me instead because fourth dimension me is invisible and not physically there. So what also happened so when I went into this past life, I had nothing to actually do with the bite. It wasn't like, a dog bite that I had to relive. What happened was it was just me basically being like, hey, you need to clear this energy from a past life. So here's how it's got to go down because you're not getting it. And sometimes the universe and your higher self are like, whoops, sorry, got to do something dramatic to get your attention. And so when I did my crystal dreaming session, it was so odd because I had no idea what to expect. And for me, it's different for everyone, but my physical body reacted before anything. And I started shaking so bad because I had so much fear from this past life. And I'm not going to share all the details, because they're kind of personal, but the gist of it was wartime. I think World War I. I was in a different country. I'm not entirely sure because that wasn't the point of knowing exactly where you are. It's just the fact that it was a different place, wartime, and I got separated as a child from my mother because of the chaos. There were like bombs dropping and buildings exploding, and so everyone was running, and I ran one way, my mom ran the other, and then soon we both turned around like, wait a minute, where'd the other person go? And so my physical body was reacting from that fear from that lifetime. I was in such a fearful state that my physical body almost couldn't handle it, and I was almost like vibrating off the floor. It was I've never experienced anything like that before. And like I said, there's some other things that came to light for me in doing this that I don't feel like sharing at this time, but that was the gist of it. It's like my past child self trying to be like, you have to get rid of this fear, because like I've said in my illumination videos, that fear was still hanging out in my energy field. And I know that there have been things that I haven't done or haven't said, people I haven't talked to, or things I haven't tried because of fear. And so, part of the healing is getting rid of that fear, acknowledging that past life and that past life self and integrating it back into you. Because like I've said, in soul retrieval, what happens is that past life self, it was able to come to me because that part of me was gone. It was in another dimension, or whatever you want to call it, because it was hiding out, because it was so fearful and scared. But then it was like, oh, wait a minute, you're healing yourself, and you're now able to see this and not be in that state of fear anymore. Have I lost you yet? Hopefully not. But it was very powerful and intense and really amazing. So that's kind of a personal story, and how the reason I wanted to tell you that, not just to either give you a cool story or, depending on who you are, a boring story. Something was triggered. I assume my pineal gland was triggered when that happened, because for about 2 months after that, anytime I meditated just by myself with no intention of past life anything, boom, I would get slammed with these images and these past lives and just things coming to me. And for me, at first, it'd always be physical. Something physical would be happening while I'm meditating, like, what is going on? And I think it had to happen that way, otherwise I'd totally just not even acknowledge it and ignore it, So another story I'm going to share that's personal was the first past life images I saw on my own, not with a practitioner doing something specific. So my first meditation I had after seeing her, all of a sudden I'm just, chilling, meditating like most people do. And all of a sudden I got this horrible pain in my bicep. It felt like someone literally stabbed me in my bicep. And I was like, ow, it literally took me out of the meditation for a second. I was like, what? And then I remembered, I'm like, oh no, is this another past life thing? So I went with it. And that's the thing, is some people would have just ignored it or been like, that's weird, I don't know, who cares? Just go with it. Because what I saw was, and it kind of sometimes works backwards, right? I saw an arrow through my arm. So old time war, and then it zoomed out even more, and I saw myself in ancient China, like ancient China, like before the Great Wall probably was even built, or right around that time. And I was a warrior, like literally, like when people think of like samurais and things like that, like old trained warrior. So I was like, in my mind, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And like, but why? Because I got the idea and the image that I had died. I was in the mountains. We're in the mountain range in China, and we're at war and whatever. But I was like, why would I have died if just an arrow went through my arm? You know, like, I feel like I could have kept going at least for a while, and then it zoomed out again, and I see some guy up on a hilltop or on the mountaintop that you can't see, and he's dipping the arrow in poison and got me. And that's why it spread like, and that's how I died. And I got this image also of, you know, people who are with me, my fellow warriors who were trying to help carry me somewhere safer, and they just couldn't do it. And basically they just left me there and to die on my own. And so the healing that had to come from that is I had to like, and I'm not expecting everyone to, this isn't going to always happen to everyone or in this way, but I'm just telling you my story from my point of view, and for everyone it's going to be different if you go into past life work, okay? The means, the stories, whatever. But what I had to do in that moment, and I think I only knew how to do this because of my crystal dreaming session, because I was in the middle of my shaman training, so I was kind of already in that realm. I had to go down I get my higher self to go down to me while I'm dying in these snow-capped mountains in ancient China. And I had to remind myself, like, hey, I know on this physical plane you're alone and they left you, but you are never alone. And it's so true. Like, no matter what, your guides, your angels, your ancestors, they're with you. You can't always see them, can't usually see them, but they're there. So I had to remind myself in that moment that I could call on them, and then, you know, I could die more peacefully. And then it kind of integrated itself back into me. So that's another story. The first time I ever did it on my own, had these things happen to me. I guess my biggest piece of advice, if you are going down that road, is to trust yourself, or, you know, trust your gut. If you have something weird happen to you during meditation, as long as it doesn't feel like horrible or someone's attacking you or something, but like if you're getting these weird images of like the Amazon, just see where it takes you. Even if you think like, oh my God, I'm making this up. Oh, well, interesting still, right? Go with it, write it down, because I can assure you, if you write it down and go back even like a year later, you're going to see things that line up according to your life now. And you're like, oh, weird or interesting. Like, since I healed myself from that, I no longer react like this, or this no longer happens. It all starts to interconnect. And it doesn't always happen at once. Like I said, sometimes these connections take years to happen. So also have to have a little bit of patience. Okay, I gotta look at my notes here so I don't go way off topic again. So I'm gonna share one more story. I've recovered a total of probably at least 10 past lives, if not more. And of course, each time this happens, they get more and more intense and more like I said in other videos, I'm very, very old, like soul-wise, like old, almost as old as possible. So I've lived a lot of lives. Some of you may have only had 10 lives. So really, if you want to do past life stuff, you might only have 1 or 2 that come through that need to come through, you know? So I'm just sharing these based off like the hundreds, if not thousands of times I've reincarnated. We'll do one more. And this one was interesting too, because again, it was like I was meditating, just trying to center myself, and all of a sudden it felt like someone, boom, punched me in the nose. The bridge of my nose hurt so bad, and I was like, what is happening? But at this point, I was like, oh boy, here we go. What's the story? So again, I'm not going to share every detail, but the main idea was that someone punched me in the face. This was like back, I'd say, between 1200 to 1400s-ish. I was at a bar, someone punched me, because I was a man, and I was jokingly, like, trying to kiss one of the guys from my crew, and I was like, my crew? From what? And I heard the term swashbuckler, which in that moment, what? So I was like, swashbuckler? Like, what is happening? All I knew is it had something to do with the sea. And most likely, now that I think about it, it's like I was either just like a pirate of some sort, or if I wasn't necessarily a pirate, just someone who was at sea a lot. But the long story short of this was that I was male and I was gay in that lifetime. But as you can probably imagine, back then, that not okay to be gay back then. And so, I had to go in and tell myself, because in that lifetime, it wasn't about how I died. It was about the sadness and emptiness I had inside because I couldn't be my true self, and me and this man that I pretended to try and kiss actually had feelings for each other. But like I said, back then, especially in a boat full of men, you could not show those feelings. So it's like we had to live near each other but not show affection in any way. And it was just draining and horrible and sad. So in that lifetime, it wasn't about the death. It was about having to go in and tell myself that it's okay, especially nowadays, like, you can love who you want. And I'm not saying everything's peachy and sunshine and rainbows all the time for, people, but you have more freedom now to express who you are, and that you're always loved. It goes back to your guides and angels and ancestors. You always got love. Even if you don't feel it, people are there to love you. Beings are there to love you. So I had to kind of go in and remind myself of that in that lifetime so that I could heal that. Okay. So most recently, I haven't seen a lot of past lives lately. Well, when I was doing my crystal dreaming training, I saw a lot of past lives. We won't go into those because those, like I said, the more I do it, the more intense it gets, the more like crazier ones. There's some past lives I've had that if I tried to tell people, they'd absolutely be like, you are actually losing your mind. And actually, I think some people would almost be offended about what I had to say about some of my lives, but so we won't go there today. We'll just stick with those stories. But I have been seeing now, you have lives in between lives. When you're not incarnated on Earth or somewhere else, you are kind of in this similar dimension, like I've mentioned in the Death Rites video, where everyone goes back to the spiritual realm. To sum it up easily, so you go there and hang out and you try and learn from your past lives and past mistakes and things like that. You talk to your guides directly, you talk to other souls directly, and I've been getting small but a few images of those in-between lives, which have been very interesting. So it's not just for the lives that you've physically been here incarnated, but you eventually, or maybe for some people it might be right away, get these images of like, whoa, you're literally just a light body and there's other light bodies around you. Or you can take a human form when you're in the spiritual realm if that's easier for you. So if you decide to try and go down this road, or you randomly get hit with it in a dream, sometimes dreams tell you about past lives. Had that happen too, and whew, that was a doozy. But just know, like I said, just go with it. Try and take with it what you can, and know that it's coming forward so that you can heal it in some way. And sometimes it's not even about literally what happened in that past life, but it's like, okay, this happened. Is it happening again in this lifetime? If it is, you have the power now to change it. So take it with what direction you think it should go. Or as I always say, if you're completely unsure, I love hearing about people's dreams or weird things that are happening. Message me, email me, and I'll give you my 2 cents if you want. Or if it's something that you cannot shake, then we'll do an illumination or a soul retrieval, which leads me to my last main point I want to make. So my most recent soul retrieval with someone, they gave me permission to share some of their story, kind of vaguely, but so this person came to me, they done an illumination with me before and had good results, and they're like, okay, but I still have this fear. They're like, I have this fear of everything. Even if I'm just walking around in my yard, they have kind of a big plot of land. They're like, I'll just be walking around and all of a sudden just fear hits me and I have to like run back to my house and I don't know why. Or, they're like, I'm just driving and all of a sudden nothing happens, but they're in fear. And so to me at that point where it's like, it's impeding on your daily life, that's when a soul retrieval is needed. It's something from a past life, maybe multiple past lives, but at least one. So for this person, what happens is I go into a meditative state and I do my whole little series here to get where I need to go to talk to who I need to talk to. But what essentially happens is I get the story of where this fear originated from. And then I bring this healing and these gifts back with me when I come back to consciousness and give it to them in their energy field and then do an illumination like normal. So this person, what had happened is I got the idea that it was one of their first incarnations, at least on Earth, or their first in a long time. It was something to do with like they weren't quite used to being here yet. And again, whether that was because they didn't incarnate much or just been a long time. But what I saw happening, it's like I was the person and there was old cobblestone streets and I see these horses, these 3 or so men on horses coming around the bend. And they're all dressed in black with black horses. And they just took out their swords and were just cutting people down in the streets. Like just driving by and bam, slashing people and killing them or gravely injuring them. And so why that was happening, I have no idea. But that's the thing, is that's not important to the story. What was important is my client was there witnessing it and got hit with it. From what I remember, I think it was a gash across the stomach or something. And basically what happened in that moment, so what happens with very traumatic moments like that, a part of your soul pieces out because it's like, I can't handle this. What is happening? And a contract is made that needs to be broken. And that's what I do. I go in and break the contract so I can bring your soul back, or that piece of it. So what happened in their instance was that as that soul, part of their soul was leaving to be safe, they made this contract with themselves that said, I don't remember the exact words I said, it was a little while ago, but something about this world is unsafe. Why would I ever come here again? I am not safe. Something along those lines. So that contract, those exact words, whatever was spoken, stuck with them. It's in their energy, and they didn't understand, they didn't know consciously. And that's why there's so much fear, because part of them was in fear that something like that would happen again, that, you know, these horses and these men would come out of the woods and just cut them down like a freaking tree. So I did all the healing that I need to do and bringing back this part of the soul and all the things that I normally do during a session like that. And I will say they seem to have had good results. And sometimes it takes a while to integrate all that, So it was about maybe a week or 2 later, and they messaged me just saying, hey, I'm out walking around on my property and I feel great doing it. I don't feel scared, So it's things like that really make an impact. It's these small parts of your souls. It's not even the part that your soul left, part of your soul. It's the contract that is made with yourself. And you have to stick to it until someone or yourself can come along and cut it. Like it's enough. Enough is enough. It's time not to fear everything. And it's not always fear. It's sometimes anger or sadness, or it's very specific with a person. So we're not even talking about soul retrieval anymore. This is more along the lines of the crystal dreaming I was talking about. Sometimes it's a person. You murdered a person in a past life, and now you guys are tied. And until you can break that tie energetically and spiritually, you're stuck with them, or you're at least stuck with the trauma. So I don't say that to make you fear things or to scare you into doing a session with me or something like that. It's just part of reality that people in the Western world are in hard denial of still. If you ask other cultures and other places around the world, sure, some would agree with people think I'm nuts, but other people would be like, oh, well, yeah, duh. These things exist, this exists, and it is what it is. So I won't go on for too much longer here, but just know that one more thing I have to say here. When you hear of kids talking about their past lives, and I don't know if I talked about this in my last soul retrieval video or reincarnation video, but believe them or other people, or trust your own gut. If you're someone who is obsessed with ancient Egypt, most likely you had a past life there. Does it automatically mean you have something that has to be cleared or some kind of trauma? No. But if you are almost obsessive about it, or you're like, oh, this situation was the worst, the civilization was terrible, you got something going there. Something's going on. Something happened to you in ancient Egypt they need to confront. And kids, when they're like, oh, I used to have a pony and he used to live here. Whoops, sorry, I dropped my crystal. He used to live here and blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, don't write them off because they're most likely remembering a past life. So same goes for my other subjects. Mommy, there's a ghost in my closet. Kids do have an imagination, but my first instinct is, oh shit, I gotta go sage your room then. You know what I mean? Believe your kids, believe adults who are like, I've been abducted in a spaceship before, because they're most likely telling the truth. And I know that some of you who hear that don't want to hear it because that's scary as shit, right? But that's the thing. The more we know, the more you know, the more you educate yourself, the less you have to fear it. So even though you hear about people being abducted and used for weird experiments, and that's not cool, if you don't fear these things, you ultimately have the power. If you're someone who's being abducted, you tell them no. Put me back. This is a free will universe. You can't just abduct me. That's not how it works. And I know that sounds absurd, but ultimately that's it. And that's part of what crystal dreaming can do, is to go in and tell these other beings to F off, pretty much. So I'll make a whole different video about crystal dreaming at some point, but this is the gist of it. This is just what I wanted to get out, to share a little bit more personal stuff, just to put it out there. And for those of you who know me, you know that I am not a liar. If you don't know me, I guess you don't know that, but these are just my experiences, and take what you want from it. Like I said, if you do go down the path of experimenting with past lives or whatever it is, whether you do it yourself or see somebody, just keep an open mind, see what you can see what you can heal. That's the whole point. Give yourself permission to heal and to bring those parts back to yourself that might have left. And in the end, it's to make yourself better, the people around you better, the world better. And yeah, that's just what I'm trying to do with these videos. As I've stated before, I'm not trying to sit here and make people think exactly what I think. You have to know exactly what I know and have the same opinions. You don't. I'm just trying to put stuff out there that I know to be true personally and see if it resonates. And if it does, awesome. If it doesn't, fine. Again, feel free to email me. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm Tarot with Tegan on there. And like I said, I'm just trying to help people. So if you're someone who thinks they've been abducted or something and just needs to tell somebody who's going to believe them, tell me. If you've seen Bigfoot in your backyard but no one believes you, you just need someone to believe you, message me, email me. I'll believe you, okay? Or if I don't for some reason, I'll explain what I think is actually happening. Or, as best as I can without knowing you or being there for your, whatever it is, your unicorn that lives in your garage. So don't think you're totally crazy if you've had any of these experiences. Most likely you're not, So if you just need to tell someone, tell me. Keep your mind open. And if you want to talk more about past lives, just let me know. Like I said, those will get you. They're going to affect you whether you believe in them or not. So good luck, everybody. You can do it, though, for real. As I always say, you've got the power. The whole thing is knowledge, understanding, and not fearing. Easy. Easy peasy.